We're standing at the highest point in Arlington National Cemetery, where right in the immediate foreground you see the tomb of Pierre L'Enfant, the man who designed that layout in the distance across the Potomac. And the thing about L'Enfant was a sort of an eccentric and difficult fellow. And sometimes people who are eccentric geniuses have visions that turn out to have been eccentric as well. But in this case, if you see what's chiseled on top of that tomb, it's the plan for all those streets and buildings that you see in the distance. And in fact, the validity of L'Enfant's genius is borne out by what we're looking at across the river.
How did he end up at this prime spot up here on the hill?
Well, it took a while. His remains were not moved to this place until 1909, even though he died in 1825. He was in a pauper's grave on a farm in Prince George's, Maryland, where he had died with $45 in his pocket. And it took a long time for history to catch up with L'Enfant. When the Macmillan Commission was formed at the turn of the 20th century to decide what was wrong with Washington, it seemed to have fallen into disrepair. They asked Frederick Law Olmsted and Daniel Burnham and some other architects and designers to come up with the perfect plan for revitalizing Washington. And they traveled to the great capitals of Europe and studied. They came back and they said, "You have your plan." And they said, "Where is it?" He said, "You've had it since 1791 when Pierre L'Enfant handed it to you. That's the perfect plan." And with that approbation, the city fathers and the government went to work to restore that vision of so many years before. And at about that time, that's when L'Enfant's reputation was resuscitated, and finally his remains moved up here. He lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda. Only 7 before him had ever had that honor.
So this is the plan that you just mentioned, right?
That's it. That's a fair facsimile of it.
He must have started with rough sketches, and at what point did he end up with this drawing, and what was the purpose of this drawing?
He did it in a couple of short months. The real purpose of the drawing was to aid real estate sales. That's why the president wanted the map made, so that people could visualize where the lot that they hoped to sell would lay. There wasn't any money to build the city of Washington, and it was thought that they would raise the money by selling off some of the land that the government had bought from some what were called proprietors, or large landowners in the area.
Well, could you describe where we are now?
Yes, we're at 23rd and K Streets, which is, as everyone knows, the location of the Washington Monument.
I don't think everybody knows that.
Well, actually it's not the Washington Monument that we're looking at, but it's a lot like what the Washington Monument was originally intended to look like. This statue behind me was executed in 1860 by a sculptor named Clark Mills. And artistically, it's not too highly thought of because people think the posture of the horse is kind of strange. It's copied after a painting of Washington at the Battle of Trenton, which I believe hangs at Mount Vernon. But the whole point of this is that in 1789, when the Congress authorized a monument to the father of our country, this is what they had in mind, an equestrian statue. And Pierre L'Enfant saw something like this as being the third essential point in the design of the city of Washington, D.C. One point would be the presidential palace, one point would be the Congress House or the Capitol, and the third would be the monument to Washington. But I think even the exuberant L'Enfant would have not conceived of a 555-foot obelisk. What he had in mind was much more in the line of what we have behind us. This was, even though it was placed in 1860, completed and dedicated long before the actual Washington Monument, which was not completed until 1888. Partly because of wrangling and partly because of that time-honored problem that we've always had in America, finding money for good works. You see the Washington Monument, even though it wasn't going to be that big obelisk, that's more or less where it was going to sit, about 100 yards from the original design spot. You see the Capitol, and the President's Palace, as L'Enfant called it, were the three anchors. And despite the grandeur of what you look at today, this in its early years, Washington was a very controversial concept. There were people who were ready to break the Union apart rather than see this capital remain here. On both sides, both the North and the South, wanted the capital in quarters more to their liking. The irony is that it took the destruction of most of what we're looking at behind us, and most of the grand buildings in any case, to turn the tide of public opinion and rally the country around the concept of this central place as the symbol of the nation. Not until the British thought enough of it to burn it did we decide that it was worth defending. I don't know that that's such an odd concept. It's a mark of the strength of the country. Despite those differences, the exercise of debate and resolving those differences is what makes us strong. And I was reminded of that when I saw, when I got the news on September 11th of 2001, when that fourth plane went down in Pennsylvania. When word got around to the passengers what those people who had hijacked the plane intended to do, bring it into Washington, destroy either the Capitol or the White House, they banded together, not military men, not superheroes, and brought that plane down rather than see that happen. And I think that's emblematic of the spirit of America. When the chips are down, we find a way to come together despite our differences in service of this great ideal, and that city over there is the symbol.
When the British did burn the White House and the Capitol, was there any thoughts or movement at that time to move it?
Oh, even after that, longtime opponents of the placement of the city introduced yet another bill in the House to move the Capitol back to Philadelphia. It was resoundingly defeated, though, and that was the last time it was ever formally proposed.
What do you suppose Pierre L'Enfant would think if he could stand beside his tomb right there now and look over the city behind you?
Well, he might say, "I told you so." A great city for a great nation.
This was a portion of a Book TV program. You can view the entire program and many other Book TV programs online. Go to booktv.org, type the name of the author or book into the search area in the upper left-hand corner of the page. Select the Watch link. Now you can view the entire program. You might also explore the Recently on Book TV box or the Featured Video box to find recent and featured programs.